Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I'll review today is The Narrow Corner. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of The Narrow Corner with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself, if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. The Narrow Corner is a novel by the English writer Somerset Maugham, published in 1932. There isn't much more I can say about Maugham without repeating myself. For me, he is one of the greatest British writers and represents the period, the first part of the 20th century, that produced some of the greatest British novels. Maugham was a very pragmatic and very profound observer of the human animal. He possessed the gift of keen observation and a very English sense of humor, which makes his books pleasant and easy to read. I think behind every great writer there is an interesting personality, a fascinating individual. Maugham was somewhat of a contradiction, born in Paris and died in south of France, where he lived most of his life, but was an image of a perfect English gentleman. He also managed to get married and produce a daughter, even though he preferred men. He studied medicine, traveled extensively, and served in the British Secret Service during the World War I, and all of it contributed to his writing. Maugham lived a long and productive life. He died at 91 and published dozens of novels, short stories, and plays. I like to compare Maugham to some other writers of his epoch, Graham Greene, V.S. Pritchett, even George Orwell. Unfortunately, Orwell died pretty young, late 40s, and we probably missed some of his best writing. Well, 1984 might have been difficult to beat. I like to watch old interviews with Maugham. They give a good idea of the man behind his books. What is The Narrow Corner about? It is about the nature of the human animal, some obvious, another that takes time and right circumstances to become visible. I think it is best summed up in this quote. Life is short, nature is hostile, and man is ridiculous. But oddly enough, most misfortunes have their compensations. And with a certain humor and a good deal of horse sense, one can make a fairly good job of what is, after all, a matter of very small consequence. Basically, people are just animals driven by instincts and able to adapt to what's in front of them to continue their existence. Well, some can't and they die. A bit of the plot. The book starts with the introduction of two recurring characters, Dr. Sanders from a short story collection on a Chinese screen and Captain Nichols from Moon and Sixpence. They are somewhat of witnesses to the main drama of the novel, which involves three young people, Fred Blake, an Australian with questionable reasons to be sailing with Captain Nichols, Eric Christensen, a Dane working for a Danish company in the Dutch East India, today Indonesia, and Louise, a beautiful young woman. Dr. Sanders, who is highly regarded in Southeast Asia for his eye surgeries, is waiting for a ship on an island somewhere in the Dutch East India to take him to his home in South China after performing successful surgery on a rich Chinese trader. He is bored waiting, so when Captain Nichols' boat docks, he decides to hitch a ride to a bigger island where he might have more luck in finding a ship sailing for China. The boat, somewhat strangely for the doctor, doesn't carry any cargo, only a passenger, Fred Blake, and the captain admits Blake is the only reason he was hired to sail. They stop on another island where they meet Eric Christensen, and he introduces them to Louise and her English father, and also her eccentric Swedish grandfather. Louise is quite taken aback by the handsome Blake, and he can sense it and takes advantage of it. The Dane has his own plans for Louise, and this creates a conflict which turns into somewhat of a Greek tragedy, and that's the basic plot. What are my thoughts about The Narrow Corner? I really did enjoy the reading. Maugham is among my favorite writers, and he never disappoints. It is an island story, a bit similar to some of Joseph Conrad's tales, but without the depth and darkness of his characters. Maugham was an Englishman with the English sense of humor, sarcastic, even occasionally silly, and that's how he saw life's struggles. And Conrad was a Pole with a brutal and violent view of the world, and he didn't see much humor in it. What both have in common is the interest in and exploration of human nature. So The Narrow Corner is more of a character study than an adventure tale. For me, Dr. Sanders, to some extent, is Maugham himself, with a practical and realistic view of life, seeing the world for what it is, and curious about human nature. The Narrow Corner. Dr. Sanders was not a great reader. He seldom opened a novel. Interested in character, he liked books that displayed the oddities of human nature, and he had read over and over again Pepys and Boswell's Johnson, Idioreau's Montaigne, and Hazlitt's essays. He read neither for information nor to improve his mind, but sought in books occasion for reverie. So very small consequences. Dr. Sanders was not a great reader. He seldom opened a novel. Interested in character, he liked books that displayed the oddities of human nature, and he read over and over again Pepys and Boswell's Johnson, Idioreau's Montaigne, and Hazlitt's essays. He read neither for information nor to improve his mind, but sought in books occasion for reverie. I remember Maugham mentions his own appreciation of William Hazlitt in one of his travel books, The Gentleman in the Parule. The title came from one of Hazlitt's quotes. Dr. Sanders could be considered somewhat of a narrator, not really a participant, but rather an observer relaying the story. He comes across as very relaxed, not prone to dramatize, just living his life by letting the time pass, without any great plans nor ambitions for future. He was very easy to get on with. He was much liked, but he had no friends. He was an agreeable companion, but neither sought intimacy nor gave it. There was no one in the world to whom he was not at heart indifferent. He was self-sufficient. His happiness depended not on persons, but on himself. He was selfish, but since he was at the same time shrewd and disinterested, few knew it, and none was inconvenienced by it. Because he wanted nothing, he was never in anybody's way. Probably this is a place he arrived at, the result of his age and the accumulation of experiences and knowledge, and also the habit of smoking opium every night. He says he smokes half a dozen pipes in an evening, but that's his limit. He considers it regular, but with moderation. The doctor's personality goes very well with the environment he inhabits, the Far East with its slow movements and the lazy atmosphere of the tropical islands, away from the civilized and hectic West. But there is a great competence in him, the practical knowledge of life, and the ability to live large, as shown in his conversations with the others. But he's not interested in fame, money, or women. Dr. Sanders was tempted to philosophize. He said that the value of life lay not in its moments of excitement, but in its placid intervals, when untroubled, the human spirit in tranquility, undisturbed by the recollection of emotion, could survey its being with the same detachment as the Buddha contemplated his navel. And the proof is his profound enjoyment of breakfast, describing the small details of the food served. Dr. Sanders is a deep thinker, but without the drama and poetry, just practical reflections about the world and life, very English, what you see is what you get. But when he is looking at the dying pearl diver, there is a hint of something deeper, even mystical. The doctor attached small value to human life. Who, that had lived so long amid those steaming Chinese, where it was held so cheap, could have much feeling about it? He was a Japanese, the diver, and probably a Buddhist. Transmigration? Look at the sea. Wave follows wave. It is not the same wave, yet one causes another and transmits its form and movement. So the beings traveling through the world are not the same today and tomorrow, nor in one life the same as in another. And yet it is the urge and the form of the previous lives that determine the character of those that follow. Dr. Sanders is my favorite character. I like his low expectations and contentment with simple life, the acceptance of it, and resignation to it. Fred Blake is somewhat opposite of Dr. Sanders. It seems to be the result of the age difference, young versus old. He is young, handsome playboy, having his way with women. He's also idealistic in the youthful, selfish way, and sees life as he would like it to be, and not willing to accept the reality, because he wants more from it. And this was his tragedy. He is pretty two-dimensional and somewhat predictable, thus not that interesting, doesn't have much to offer except his physical appeal, a short-term satisfaction for somebody interested. Eric Christensen is similar to Blake, probably as the result of their youth, but he sees the world, and more importantly the people in it, as the extension of himself, with the qualities he possesses: honest, caring, ethical, honorable, admirable, and all the other positive adjectives we like to use when referring to ourselves. He is young and somewhat naive, and so is his love for Louise. He is idealistic, forgetting she's an individual, human, with her own ambitions and idiosyncrasies, and when he is faced with them, he can't deal with it.